Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Science or Fiction podcast, a youth-led platform explaining the key issues in science that matter to you. I'm Dr. Catherine Bates. I'm a research scientist studying mental health at King's College London.
And I'm Sahla Ansari. I'm a producer and co-host of today's podcast, and I'm a neuroscience and psychology student here at King's.
And this is a very special live recording of the Science or Fiction podcast. Excellent audience participation. So we're going to be asking the panel why scientists often don't look like the people that they're trying to help and what we can do about it. So, lack of representation in science is a long-standing issue. Around 1 in 7 scientists pictured in textbooks are women. Around 7% of scientists shown in textbooks are people of colour. And this is not representative of the aspiring student population. So at King's, the BSc Psychology undergraduate programme, for example, 40% of the students are people of colour. The evidence also shows that more diverse teams generate more impactful research and are better at tackling complex problems. In a recent survey, only 12% of young people said that scientists represented their values. And technical difficulty, hang on. And only 8% said that they felt like scientists look like them. So it's vital for young people to feel represented in science. And how can we make that happen? So today, I'm joined by a panel. We have on my far left, Salim Hashmi, who's a senior lecturer at King's College London. Then we have Maheen Siddiqui, who's a research fellow and lead of the Diversity and Developmental Science Network at Birkbeck University. We have Amalia Odutola, who's the community and engagement manager for SciTranslate, and producer and co-host, Sahla Ansari, undergraduate student at King's College London. So, yeah, great, clap. Yeah. Okay, so let's get started. Was there a moment when you first felt science was or wasn't a place for you? And how did your identity or background shape that experience? Have you ever dealt with feeling underrepresented or with imposter syndrome, and what helped push you through? So it's like a double question. And Salim, you're looking at me, so I'm going to put you on the spot to go first.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm going to answer that in a weird order. So I think before I worked at King's, I studied at another university, Cardiff University. And there was not a lot of diversity there at all. So I think I know I spent a lot of time as an undergraduate and as a PhD student feeling underrepresented. There wasn't anyone in the staff body who really looked like me. When I went to conferences back then, still did not feel like I encountered people who looked like me. But then I suppose for the beginning part of the question, the times or the first time I remember feeling like I was represented in science or I could see myself in science was actually when I joined King's, and I gave my first lecture to our BSc psychology cohort because, as like your statistics pointed out, we have a very diverse cohort here at King's, and so I felt a real sense of belonging with them, which I still feel now, and is probably the place where I feel like I belong the most in science. Because even now when I go to conferences, I often feel slightly out of place because there aren't that many people who are South Asian or people of colour. So it really is in sort of the teaching spaces with our undergraduates that I feel that sense of, oh, I belong here.
That's really nice. And that's what's helped you push you through, like resonating with the undergraduate population?
Yeah, I think resonating with the undergraduate population and sort of knowing that what I didn't experience, they might be experiencing more of.
Yeah, that's really nice. Thank you. Maheen, do you want to add?
Yeah, so I think I had a similar experience to Salim. When I was doing my PhD 10 years ago, when I would go to conferences, I would be pretty much the only visibly female Muslim person there. And I would often feel like an outsider as well. But I think over the years, I've kind of learned to own my identity. I think there was a time where I would kind of try to take up less space, or, not like kind of put myself out there. And I think I did struggle a lot with imposter syndrome, and I still do to this day. But I think as I've advanced in my career and I've had success with my research, I think that's helped me build my confidence, which kind of helps to overcome that a little bit.
Yeah. So did those two things like compound together, like not feeling a part of something and imposter syndrome?
I
that
think
makes it
so.
worse?
Yeah.
Thank you. Amalia, do you want to share something?
Yes. I'll start with for me during my undergraduate, I was fortunate that my undergraduate personal tutor was a Black woman, and I know that within psychology, within the staff body at the University of Birmingham, which is where I studied, there wasn't a lot of Black lecturers, but I was able to have a tutor who was Black, and I think from that beginning that like really encouraged me, and seeing someone who kind of looked like me in such a position was just good to see at the beginning of my academic career. So that I really looked up to her for the rest of my undergraduate. I also was able to partake in 2 research programs during my undergrad, which were targeted towards like what we're discussing today, and just kind of working on representation in science and diversifying research careers. And I think being in those really made me feel like there's a space for me, because it's nice to know that there are initiatives that care about having more representation. And I was able to meet Catherine there, and just having mentorship as well really helped. I'd say was probably during my academic career, like even from sixth form, none of the researchers that we saw were ever like people of color or Black or Asian. It was always a white older man. So never really seeing anyone do what you wanted to do kind of made me think that like it's not something I could do in the future. But yeah, that's probably what I'd say.
Yeah, I think people are even surprised when I worked a lot in schools like during my PhD, and when I would call myself a neuroscientist, like they couldn't really get their head around it, that like a young woman was like a neuroscientist and wasn't wearing a lab coat. Just I didn't get it. Thank you for sharing. Do you want to share maybe a little bit about your EEG project, and also the like the internship that you did with us? Maybe say the name of it if you're happy to, so that people know.
Yeah, so I did during my undergrad, I did an EEG project, and I also did Inter Research and HDR UK, which are both programs directed towards increasing people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds or from Black communities into science. And for my EEG project, it was centered around addressing this problem we have of disparity of Black people in EEG research because of the way our hair is. A lot of research studies will kind of discourage Black participants because they find difficulty with putting the EEG cap over our hair and the hairstyles that we have. So instead of like addressing that, they were often like discouraged from applying to the research studies. So you had a lot of research papers and like results that were very skewed towards a like white population. So me and a team of undergraduate students, we kind of worked together to plan different hairstyles and also different cap designs that would allow for more Black participants. And I would say that experience as well kind of made me feel like being a Black researcher means that I have like a different perspective, and that I guess would say best suited to like address these sort of concerns. So that way, you're definitely, there is a place for you in science, because that's a prime example.
Yeah, brilliant. And so, like just such an important project, and you started so early changing science, like in your undergrad. It's so impressive. I'm going to pass to you for the next one.
Okay, so my first question is, what barriers or setbacks did you face on your route into science? And what's one failure or unexpected challenge that young people don't usually hear about?
Yeah. So I think a barrier is that constant feeling of imposter syndrome that doesn't always go away, or just comes back at very strange times, like now. And I think also sometimes just navigating really complex situations or topics within what's happening in the world. So I do a lot to do with decolonizing the curriculum, promoting equality, diversity, inclusion within our teaching. And that's happening at a time when the global climate isn't always particularly positive and is quite divisive. So I think that's a key barrier. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
Failure or a setback that you've experienced that young people might not have heard about.
I'm not pausing because I can't think of any. I'm not being that.
Filtering through.
Yeah, I'm filtering through all of them. I think maybe a setback is that I think sometimes there's that assumption that, particularly as a lecturer with students, that we don't feel nervous, or we're always fairly, always quite confident and not feeling the nerves. But public speaking is public speaking, and everyone can feel quite nervous from time to time. And I think sometimes sharing that can be quite important and powerful. When I'm sort of in a lecture theatre with the students and just sort of say, I've frozen a bit because I'm actually quite nervous because there's 300 of you and I'm really hoping you're all like paying attention. And that sort of feeling of nerves can be a bit of a barrier.
And do you have any barriers or setbacks that you maybe had earlier on in your career?
I think particularly wondering whether this was a space, I think, more of a barrier or a way of thinking, is this a space that I want to stay in terms of it being meaningful and making a contribution? And I think it wasn't until I came here here to King's and felt like, there was a contribution being made because I found community and I felt like I was, sound really, really like unhumble, but a bit of a role model towards people. I think that made me feel like, oh, okay, what you're doing has meaning and it has value. And I think before that, the barrier was, okay, well, is this actually, am I doing something valuable? So I think especially with science, sometimes it's quite, you're making small progress on little things. And so it doesn't often feel like you're making a big contribution. So yeah, did that answer your question?
Very much so. Thank you. Maheen, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I'll talk about earlier in my career. And so basically, nobody in my family or in my friends had pursued a career in academia or in research. And I went into a PhD just simply because I was interested in learning. I liked studying, and I thought I'll just do a PhD. And I had no idea about what it entailed, what a research career looks like, what progression looks like. So I think I found it quite difficult knowing what I'm doing at times or where I'm going, or how I'm going to move forward. So in hindsight, that sort of knowledge would have been really helpful. But yeah, I've learned a lot, and I try now to pass it on to people who are in similar situations where they might be the first in their family, for example, to even go to university. In terms of challenge, so I want to talk about balancing family and academia. So when you're thinking about doing a PhD, you might be quite young and you might not be thinking about having kids, and so it might not be on your radar at all, but it's something that you need to think about if you want to have a family and you're planning a career. I often think that an academic career often just is kind of messy. It's not linear. You kind of go into things by accident, but I think having a family requires quite a bit of planning. So I think that is not something that's talked about much at all. I became pregnant for the first time while I was at the end of my PhD, and actually did my Viva when I was 36 weeks pregnant. I don't recommend that. Yeah. And then I had my second daughter a few years later, and I went part-time. I think just navigating all of that, so becoming a mother, the research, and then part-time working can be quite tricky. Everyone else is on a full-time contract, or they might be working full-time, and it's you're not working at the same pace as them, so it can be quite difficult. It creates a lot of pressure. You're not having as many outputs. I think that is quite challenging, and that's something that I'm learning to balance as I go.
And that's really helpful. I think for context, you're on short-term contracts, the same as me, right? So as postdocs, research fellows, we're on like contracts could be anything between 6 months to, if you're really lucky, like 3 to 5 years. So mine current one is 3 years and ends in December. So it can be so difficult having to, like, trying to plan your life around it and also knowing what's coming next, and the security can be so hard.
Yeah. But that being said, I think being in academia is like, I think if I had been in any other job, it would have been really difficult to balance what I do. And there's a lot of flexibility, and it is difficult, as any job is, but there's a lot of flexibility, which I really appreciate when it comes to family life. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say similar to what Salim mentioned, dealing with imposter syndrome, especially if you're like earlier in your career, I guess if you let it, it can really be like a setback in pursuing your academic aspirations. I'd say, like, for me, coming from like a Newham, which is considered like not the greatest borough in England, and also being one of the only person that looked like me in my classes and in any of the research placements I did, that kind of it kind of discouraged me a little bit. And there was a point, I think, in the first research placement I did where, like, in the whole building, I didn't see anyone that was like Black there. So it kind of made me feel just like a bit small. I just wanted to be quiet and not make too much noise. And I think that I could have let it discourage me, but I had to like change my perspective after like speaking to different people. And I think an important thing is kind of just, I don't know, letting it be a bit more of like a superpower as opposed to something that you like feel ashamed of or let it like belittle you. And I think that, you know, there's already so many barriers that you don't want to add another one to yourself by you telling yourself that there's no one that looks like me, so I shouldn't progress in this career. So I think if you can get through that, I think that can be a barrier that you don't have to put yourself through while pursuing your career. And yeah, I think, sorry, I'm having a look at my notes. I think, just, I don't know, just not letting anyone also discourage you. Because I think in sixth form, there were teachers that kind of discouraged me from pursuing science as well, kind of saying that I wouldn't get the grades to go to a Russell Group university, and kind of saying that a career in psychology, there wouldn't be much money in it, and that there's not really much of a career for you if you go down that route. A lot of people do say things like that when you say that you want to pursue psychology. So I think just not listening to that and just going ahead.
Yeah, I think that's so brave to be able to push through that kind of criticism. But you are right though. Like, I got A, B, D in my A levels, and I didn't go to a very good university, and I'm sat here. So it is doable. You can do it. If you want to pursue it, you can push through.
Just as a little side note, if that's okay for myself as well, I think scientist can be such a broad term, and oftentimes a lot of young people might not necessarily have an idea of what a scientist could be outside of, as we said, kind of an old white man in a lab coat. So could you guys just quickly explain what your role kind of consists of, and what a scientist means to you? Ahmad, can you go first this time?
Yeah, so I'm hoping to do my master's in September. So I'm hoping to pursue like a clinical research career. But for me, I think a scientist just means someone who is on the routes to pursuing knowledge through like systematic analysis, experiments, observation. It definitely doesn't fit into this like belief that you think of like someone in a lab coat, like mixing like bottles and stuff like that. You can do research in, of course, so many different, and science in so many different areas. But yeah, at the moment I work with like a science consulting company, just doing science communication and community engagement. So I work with a lot of like researchers and kind of help them kind of like be unified together and just have that community within research. So yeah, that's what I do at the moment.
Very interesting. Thank you.
So to me, a scientist is someone who's curious and trying to find out more about how the world works. And that's what really excites me about my job, is that I get to contribute to generating new knowledge about how the brain works. So I'm a psychology researcher, and I develop new types of neuroimaging technology to understand brain development in babies. And so kind of day to day is quite different. I might be working with families. Babies come into our lab. We put on these special caps that measure their brain activity while they might be playing with us. Sometimes we might be putting the babies in an MRI scanner to find out what's happening in their brain. So it's quite varied on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes I can be interacting with the family, sometimes looking at the data behind the screen. So yeah, definitely doesn't fit into that lab coat thing that you described. I also run the Diversity and Developmental Science Network. So that's a network that I founded at Birkbeck to help improve equity in developmental science. So we're trying to improve diversity among researchers in developmental science, but also make our research practices better and more inclusive.
And do you feel like you have that flexibility to kind of pick a research project that you're interested in as you kind of develop in your career? Or is it kind of a thing where you have to choose what's like already out there?
I think I've been really lucky because I got some funding to carry on the work that I was doing in my PhD. And they're funding me for quite a long time. It's 8 years. And so, I've been quite lucky that I'm basically the leader of the project. I get to decide the direction that it's taking and everything. But I know that with a lot of other people, it's not the case. You sometimes just have to go with the postdocs that are available. Or if you're on a PhD, that's already a part of a funded grant, for example, you might have to just pursue the whatever line of research your PI has, for example. So I think it depends. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Salim?
So I don't think I've got anything to add for what a scientist is, because I think that's been covered really well. In terms of what my role is, so I'm a senior lecturer. So I do some research with children. Most of my research involves giving children either toys or digital games to play, and we're just looking at differences in how they're playing with different toys and with different people. So it's quite fun. And then alongside that, I teach on our BSc psychology degree in developmental psychology, and then also do a lot in relation to promoting equality, diversity, inclusion. And I suppose, what my role looks like is really varied. So, I mean, this week alone, we're on Wednesday. Monday, I was reviewing my PhD students' work and then looking at some updates to a textbook for our teaching for next year. Yesterday, I was writing a grant proposal to look at how play might be different in neurodivergent children. And today I threw a birthday party for my journal club on diversity and inclusion in psychology. And it was a birthday party. We sang happy birthday. Really varied in my role.
Well, thank you, because I think that just shows that there's so many different types of roles as a scientist and so many things that you can actually go into. So my next question is, how did you find the area of science that interested you, and what opportunities, programs or insider knowledge do you wish you'd known earlier? Maheen, do you want to start this time?
Sure. So I didn't actually do my A-levels here. I was in Pakistan. And at the time, they didn't really have very good career guidance, even though I was at a pretty good school. And I literally came into it by complete accident. So I was good at maths, so I decided to do a maths degree. And then when I was doing my maths degree, I came across this field called mathematical biology, where they were teaching us about applications of maths to like natural sciences. And that's kind of where I thought, okay, I could apply some of my mathematical knowledge. So I applied to this interdisciplinary PhD program. It's called LIDO, where they take people who have a background in physical sciences and they'll put them in more natural sciences projects, or the other way around. So if they've studied, for example, biology, chemistry, or any other natural science, you'd go into like a computer science project. So that's how I got into my PhD program. With my project, we got a booklet of projects and I said, this one looks interesting. So it was pretty much entirely by accident, but I know from speaking to other researchers, they would be like, they're very intentional about it. So someone did their undergrad, then their master's, and then they really pursued a specific PI that they were interested in working with. And then they tried to get funding to do that project. So for me, it was like completely by accident. But that also meant that I didn't have any insider knowledge into how things worked in a research career, what an academic career involved or looked like. So in hindsight, it would be good to have that that knowledge about what an academic career actually involves, what it's like to work at an institution, how institutions actually work, and how you progress in an academic career. I think.
Perfect, thank you. And just quickly, what does PI stand for?
Sorry, principal investigator.
Okay, perfect.
So that's
thank
the person that leads a project.
Perfect, thank you. Amalia?
So I mentioned them briefly, but in my, I think, penultimate year of my undergrad, I did inter-research first, which is designed to kind of share how to get into your PhD for undergraduate students from low socioeconomic backgrounds. And I think that was my first sort of way where I was introduced into like more neuroscience topics. It was, the project I did was in visual perception and post-addiction. So it's very different to like what I want to go into, but it introduced me a lot to like fMRIs and analyzing data in MATLAB, which was a pain in the head. And I think that kind of, through that, I met a lot of members of the lab and I was able to read their work. And one in particular, like really stood out to me, that was kind of like touched on psychosis and prediction errors. And like reading that paper, I decided to like base one of my final year like assignments off of it because we had to like extend already done research. And I think that was a moment where I was like, okay, I'm really interested in this area of science. So I kind of like had that in my mind that I wanted to go into like psychosis research. And then during HGR UK, which is another program that I touched on, that you can do at any stage of your career, actually. You don't have to be an undergrad or a master's student. And that's just encouraging more Black scientists in health data science. So I did mine at King's College, and that was a very, very great program. You did like research even outside of the placement that you were doing. I think I did one with the British Heart Foundation on the side, like a data challenge. And I was first introduced more so into data on that program, and I really enjoyed it. Speaking with all the people in the building kind of made me think that like, yeah, I definitely want to go into like data and statistics within the realm of mental health research. So I'd say that's something related to like insider knowledge as well that I think would really be good for students to kind of look at what sort of science opportunities are available, because you don't have to know what you want to go into early on, but just trying different things kind of can stir you in the right direction. So yeah, for me, those two are great.
Thank you. And Salim?
Oh, no, I was just going to say that when we publish a podcast episode, we'll put in the show notes links to all the different programs and things that people have suggested. So you don't have to remember the names. We can publish it there for you.
So for me, I'll go through the two areas. So the first one in sort of play research and developmental or child psychology. For me, I found that interest when I was doing my degree, and I remember sitting in a lecture and one of the lecturers was talking about their research where she invited families into a living room in the law building that was all dressed up to be a birthday party. Birthday parties are a theme. All dressed up to be a birthday party because she was investigating how children sort of display aggressive behaviors when they meet unfamiliar other children. And I think it goes back to the idea of like what science is, because to me, that was the first time I thought about like, oh, wow, this is research, this is science. And there was someone wearing a dress to be a birthday princess and a bear came in. It was all very strange and delightful. And so over that summer, I found out that our university had a research scheme where you could do some research with a lecturer and you were paid to do so. And I was desperate to stop working in the next stock room. So I did that, and that's how I found a sort of passion for developmental research. And I've been very, very like privileged that I've been able to just study children's play, which is just always fun and something I'm interested in. And then in terms of the other sort of arm, so that diversity and inclusion in science, for me, that sort of passion really came during the summer of 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, and lots of conversations about, conversations. And I was sort of looking around me and sort of being a bit critical of what other institutions or other people weren't doing. And then turned that to myself to sort of say, well, actually, there's lots that you can do within your sphere of influence. So you should probably do that before you start to, judge anyone else. And what was the second part of the question? Sorry.
If there are any opportunities, programs, or insider knowledge that you wish you'd known about earlier.
Yeah, I think for me, I wish I'd known earlier about those sort of opportunities to take part in research, but also to see the exposure of different kinds of research and that it looks really, really different. I mean, also like just listening to all of us here, we all have such a different sort of what we're doing in research is quite different. If we all had a slide up of what our research was, I'm sure the visuals would be very different. And I think that's something that I didn't really know until I really experienced it. And then that most universities have an opportunity for students to take part in research, both as a participant, but also to like contribute to the research. And again, both of those really help to just showcase how different the science can be.
If there's a lecturer that a student is interested in their research, how would you recommend approaching that lecturer or going about it to see about knowing more about their research or joining them at all?
So it's really not uncommon that I get emails from students here at King's and elsewhere who just sort of say, hey, I've seen this research. Do you have any opportunities for me to contribute or volunteer, or do you have any paid positions? Unfortunately, a lot of the time I am saying no, but when they tell me what they're interested in, I can at least sort of signpost them to other people or other resources. So I'd say it's absolutely fine to get in touch as long as you're getting in touch via their professional account. So I sometimes get people message me on LinkedIn, and I always redirect them to my university profile and my university email address to make sure that's all professional. But yeah, just sort of say what you're interested in and why. I think as long as it comes across organically that, yeah, you've read what I've done and you are interested, I'm always happy to see those emails, and where I can sort of then follow up and offer things, I do.
Okay, perfect. So it's always kind of worth just giving it a shot and just sending an email.
Yeah, I think as long as it's professional and it's to their professional email address. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And Hannah?
I would just add to that as well. Don't be disheartened if people don't reply. I would keep always, contact someone else that you're interested in working with as well, because don't let that put you off if you end up emailing the one person that is busy. I think that like variability in research, and also like as well as like the barriers, the type of science that you're doing, is like a theme in what we've been talking about. So like everybody has a different path, a different experience. There's so many different opportunities, and I often find that I found that overwhelming throughout my career, and I find it difficult to explain to some people as well. So I think like as much as that is one of the best things in science, because that's how we discover new things, and like everybody has a different experience, it can be such a barrier to helping more people get into science, because I'm constantly trying to pull together things that I know about, like different funding streams or different resources for people that I'm working with to try and help. But I find that really frustrating. So it kind of leads on to my question of like, what does inclusive science actually look and feel like? So, but beyond the statistics, what needs to change in research, education, or institutions to get there? I'm going to put you on the spot again, Salim.
I'm really getting it today. I think for me, it's really about people seeing themselves in sort of these spaces, and not necessarily visually, but just feeling a connection to it. So when I think about when I'm teaching, what I want when I think about when I'm teaching, what I want is for students to in some way connect with the material, to feel like it's of relevance to them in some way, which for me, I find is, I teach developmental psychology. So I talk about people's experiences in childhood, into adolescence, into adulthood, and into later adulthood. For me, there's no way that I can't teach that without acknowledging that diversity and then allowing people in the room to bring their own experiences into that. So I think it's, for me, people being able to connect to that. And then even when I'm reading research, I want to be able to read something and feel as though, oh, okay, I can see my connection there. I can see why that might be relevant, not necessarily to me, but to my community more broadly. So that connection is really important for me.
That's really nice. Thank you. So like not ignore people. I feel like sometimes we teach to be like, this is the knowledge and you are the person listening. It's like draw that all together and make sure people feel involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that there's many areas of certainly psychology, but I'd also say areas of science that in some way people don't have a connection to or relationship with. So there is always the option for people to bring in their experiences to the, I mean, certainly in psychology, I think. So yeah, that ability to have it more conversational, to sort of say, well, actually, here is the evidence. This might not line up with your experiences, but and why is that the case? Is it because we just haven't looked at it, or is there problems in what has been? Are there problems in what has been done previously, or is it just that more needs to be done?
Yeah, thank you, Maheen. What does inclusive science look like to you?
Okay, so to me, I think it's there's two sides of it. There's the researcher side, and then there's the research participant side. So if we think about the research participant side, I think inclusion is about who is involved in shaping the research. So I think it's really important that communities are involved in shaping research questions. So, for example, I do research on babies, so it's very important that I consult with parents, I sit down with them, I try to understand what questions they actually want answered, and then I use their knowledge and experiences to actually design the research to make sure that it's accessible and inclusive to everyone. I think it's really important. And I think for that to happen, there needs to be a slight shift in how we do research. So at the moment, there's a lot of pressure to collect data quickly, publish it, and then move on to the next grant. But I think we need to adopt the principles of slow science. So there's this idea of slower science where you do things properly, thinking about them more intentionally rather than just rushing through. So, for example, I could probably fit in 3 babies in one day if I wanted to. But if I want to be able to treat parents as partners in my research and to actually, build a trust and relationship with them and not just treat them as, participant numbers, then I need time to explain things to them properly, make sure that they understand things. And then, that means that it means I can only test 1 participant a day, for example. That means that I collect data slowly, but it means that, I've built this relationship with them, which they're then likely to go and share within their communities that they had this experience here, and then there are other people that are likely to participate. I think creating those sorts of environments, research environments, takes time, and it has to come from the people leading the research, and then over time it helps improve the inclusivity. And then from the researcher side of things, I think there's a lot that institutions need to do to improve representation among researchers. So it kind of goes hand to hand. So we've run these focus groups as part of our diversity and developmental science network, where parents say that they want to participate in research studies where they can see that the researchers look like them. So it's not just having inclusive research practices, it's also having it at the researcher level, making sure that it's an environment where researchers feel included, and that's something that institutions need to work on. I think it has improved, but definitely something that needs to and they need to work on constantly. I hope I didn't
No, that's
divert too
brilliant.
much.
Yeah, thank you. It's really clear.
Can I quickly add
Yeah.
something? Because I think as you're talking, I was really thinking as well. I really love the term slow science, because for me, I think it's also thinking about after we've done the science, we've analysed our data. What we're often doing is then publishing that data in articles that lots of people can't access unless you have a university email address or you pay. We are disseminating that at conferences where to get to that conference, you have to pay. So I think we need to remove some of those financial barriers that mean that the general public can't access scientific knowledge, and also make sure that we're always disseminating research or sharing our research in ways like this and like formats like this, where it is accessible to the general public, both in terms of like the ability to hear about it or read about it, but it's also written for them or shaped for them.
And I think that's where institutions and funders come in, because, like, for example, the funding that you've had to do this, there need to be other pots of funding to promote things like this. Otherwise, it puts a lot of burden on the researchers if they're, using their own time and resources to disseminate information to their research participants. So
Yeah. It seems as well that universities are doing better at the kind of student level at making people including more people, making people feel more included. But then there's like a whole new set of barriers after graduating and then into like the next step of science that are really difficult as well. Like, for example, the fact that there's just so many different programs and no clear route into a PhD or into a job. Like, trying to bring that together, I think institutions need to have a role in that as well, rather than it's just like, okay, they've graduated, off you go. So how are we actually, opening up the next stage of their career as well?
Yeah, and I think it shows in those statistics, again, from earlier, that we have initiatives. We've got widening participation initiatives. We've got recruitment to ensure that we are recruiting a diverse body of students. But then are we continuing that to ensure that we are still supporting them through their academic journey so that they are becoming the sort of scientists as well?
Malia, what do you want to add about what inclusive science looks like?
I feel like for me, inclusivity in science, I feel like science isn't science without perspective. So I feel like, for example, in the project that I did with Catherine, we had a focus group with teenagers, and I was able to share the findings of the project that we did, which was about loneliness and coming from a low socioeconomic background. And I was able to share my findings, and we talked about the terminology that I would use when sharing the research, and kind of like we had a bit of a section that we were going to have in the paper about what the focus group showed. So I think things like that and having that in science is a big part of inclusivity, just kind of having different perspectives with really any research project you're doing, just even if it's a conversation with someone from a different background or someone who would be impacted by this research, and sharing the research findings with people who will be impacted. That's something that I think is really healthy to have in the science community. And I also feel like just having conversations, like from a researcher level, especially if you're more higher up, I think having conversations with young people when they're eager, I think that does a lot as well. That encourages them to get excited and encourages them for any opportunities or things that you might know of. So just like taking the time to like help each other and be there for each other, I think that adds to an inclusive environment as well.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll hand over for our last panel question.
Okay, so my last question is, what would you say to a young person who's interested in science but can't yet picture themselves belonging here? Sorry, Salim.
I was looking away, hoping it wouldn't be me, but it was. I'd say a couple of things. I think, firstly, I understand that feeling completely. And I think it's a shame that there are young people who probably still feel like that, but then kind of, that shared experience sometimes in and of itself, just acknowledging that can be really powerful. And then I'd sort of say that you can create belonging in sort of when you're in different spaces. So I think a lot of what I have done in sort of the journal club we were celebrating today is partially because I wanted a space where I felt like I had some belonging. And so I just created that and have been very, very blessed that people have kept coming along to it. But that's very much, I've created spaces that I want to belong in, and then I've seen through that other spaces that I might want to be, and been in them to create them. But I totally acknowledge that I've been able to do that because I have the privilege of being here. So that's what I say now. I don't know what I would say to the version of myself at Cardiff who definitely felt like that, other than a scientific career means that there's always opportunities to change and do different things. And so consider that when you're making those changes. One of the reasons I moved from Cardiff to London was because I very much wanted to be in a space where I felt like I belonged again. So I think, my advice would be scientific careers involve change, and they involve lots of doing different projects. Don't just select the projects based on your interest in them. That's obviously really important, but also just think about where you're going to be and whether you're going to feel like you belong there, because that's also really important.
Thank you very much. Maheen?
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Salim said. So when I founded the Diversity and Developmental Science Network, it was also kind of trying to find a space for myself where I felt like I belonged. And I've managed to grow this network. We've got like over 200 members. There's 7 people that work with me. And they're people that genuinely care about improving equity in developmental science. And that really makes me feel, like that gives me a space where I feel like I belong. Even if generally, in the field, I am still very underrepresented. I would say to just give it a go. Like Salim said, you never know where you're going to end up. And I think for science to be successful, I think we've seen, many years ago, I think maybe like 20 years ago, there would be all the departments would kind of be isolated. And now we're seeing more and more interdisciplinary research. We know that science needs interdisciplinary research to survive. And in the same way, it needs people from lots of different backgrounds and experiences to make it work. So I would say just give it a go. And just because you feel like you don't see people like you doesn't mean that you belong. There are people who might want to support you. I think finding a good mentor is very important. Like Salim said, don't just go by the research project and how interested you are, but also look at the environment, look at the mentor. Often I would say that's more important, if not equally important, than the actual project that you do, because then after your PhD, you might end up doing something completely different, for example. But the mentorship stays with you for longer. So, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just to add to that, mentorship, I think is a big thing for young people that can really help. So seek out mentors where you can, even people that have shared characteristics with you, someone that you can look up to, or in a topic that you're interested in, or even if it's not a topic that you're interested in, just having someone who knows a bit more about the field, and just someone that you can bounce off ideas with and share future plans with. I think having multiple mentors as well. You don't have to just have one mentor, have multiple. I would also say explore different fields. As a young person, you have so much of your life ahead of you. You don't have to stay within one area of science. So it's okay to try one area of science and you realize it's not for you, then try another area. So just don't give up if you tried one thing and you feel don't really enjoy it, or it's too much maths or anything like that. Try another area. And I feel don't worry as well if you feel, because I feel there can be some insecurity with feeling you're not the smartest person in the room, science-wise, especially when you're young, because it's you've got so much of your academic career ahead of you that there's space to grow. But if you do feel like that, just know that you've got a lot of space to learn. Your university will have most universities will have sessions and skills sessions where you can grow in whatever area you feel you fall short. So if science is something you want to do, just do it anyways. And I just feel use the fact that again, I think I said it before, that you've come from a different class or background, use that to your advantage, use that perspective to change research or, share your ideas. Don't ever be quiet about it, because you know you need that perspective. You need fresh minds. We need young minds in science, because the world is, you know, ever changing. And I just feel like, yeah, we work better when we, you know, unite together. So I just think that's something you should think about and just let it encourage you.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much. That was so many important insights from all of you. And you're also right that the evidence literally shows that, you know, more diverse teams, more diverse participants, more diverse research creates more impactful research, and we need this in science. So we literally need everyone to be bringing new perspectives, fresh perspectives, and forming that space. So that's super exciting. We're going to that's the end of our panel questions. So we're going to switch to the Q&A. Okay, so maybe we'll start with this one. Do you feel like the financial insecurity of fixed term contracts has an impact on who is able to work in research? Maybe I'll hand that to you, Maheen, first.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've been very lucky because I've got a husband with a stable job and a much higher income than me. Otherwise, I think, which kind of balances it out, and it's allowed me to pursue this research career. Had it not been the case, then I probably wouldn't be here. Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah, I suppose just to say, I mean, I'm very privileged that my contract is mostly funded for teaching. So I've been on sort of long-term contracts, but my contribution is 80% teaching and 20% research. So I suppose, yeah.
Nice. So another one we have here is, what do you think would be a helpful portrayal of scientists in public-facing media? So how best can we move past the stereotypical white guy, white lab coat in a lab? So what do we need to do when we're public-facing? Hopefully more events like this.
Yeah, I'd say more events like this. And also, I was reading a paper about diversity fatigue, and it was a really interesting paper, and it talked about a lot of things about how we can improve diversity in science. And I believe one of the things they mentioned was when we are looking at research from scientists that don't fit the stereotype of what we think a scientist looks like, it can help to actually include pictures and videos of different scientists and researchers when you're talking about their work. I think just that visual representation kind of helps break away from that stereotype, because it's all good and well that if you have a citation and it's someone who's doesn't fit the stereotype, but to see it, I think also will make a change as well.
I think just talking about your work as often as you can in more public-facing spaces. So whether that's going to schools and talking to kids, or I know the Royal Society does a science exhibition, and there have been people from my collaborators department that have set up a booth there, and they talk to people about what they do. I think just having things like that really helps people to open their minds about what a scientist does.
Yeah, I think for me it goes back to that idea of taking away some of the financial barriers to accessing science, because if there was more just public access to scientific knowledge, then that would in and of itself showcase it. I think absolutely, initiatives like this, things like Pint of Science, really help showcase the breadth of different science. And I suppose, as I was trying to think about what representation of science did I see in the media when I was younger? And I suppose I'm aging myself slightly, but I used to watch Friends, and the scientist there was Ross, who was a paleontologist. So studying dinosaurs, that felt like science. I can't remember ever seeing oh, there's someone who researches psychology, or there's someone who researches another social science, or things like that. So I think it's also about, well, actually, if we're looking at the representation that's there in film, TV shows, and media, it's usually some kind of stereotype of a scientist, and sort of maybe removing some of that. Maybe we need a soap opera based at a university just to showcase what it's like.
I think sometimes as well, maybe journalism is to blame a little bit. 'Cause when you read articles and they've got a quote, it'll be a professor from Cambridge that's an old person. And you're a bit like, well, why not talking to the like early career researchers or the actual like postdoc or PhD student that did the study that you're talking about in this article? I think we need more recognition of like who's doing the science in all parts of the media as well.
Another question is, what's the hardest and your most favorite part in your career?
I'm quite early in my career, so I can only say a little, but I'd say probably the hardest is the money. Like everything's so expensive. So like I'm at the stage where I'm preparing for my master's and trying to save for my master's. So I think if I let it get to me, I probably could have stopped wanting to pursue like further education because it's just so expensive. But and was it the favorite part as well? Yes. I think my favorite part is, this is gonna sound corny, but like the people, like the people that you meet like at these different institutions, and just the knowledge and access to knowledge that's available to you. Like when I was doing my internship at King's, I was able to attend different seminars. Like I attended one in deconstructing mental health research, and that was a really big eye-opener for me. Like genuinely, it really set me on a path to like care a lot about diversity in research. So just the kind of things that you can learn around you, it's just like, I know I love learning, and if you're someone who loves learning, I think a career in like research or science is definitely going to make you feel happy in life.
Yeah, for me, the most difficult part, I think, is the uncertainty. So I've got this big project. I don't know what's going to come out of it. I think that uncertainty gives me quite a bit of anxiety. I don't know if I'm going to be able to produce the results that I need to get my next grant, to then secure my next role. So I think that uncertainty and that pressure definitely gets to me at times. But what I really enjoy, I think, is I love working with families and meeting the babies and, genuinely speaking to the parents and getting to know more about people. Like I've spoken to hundreds of parents now. And yeah, just it's exciting to be doing something new that nobody's ever done before, which of course comes with a lot of challenges, but it's also quite exciting when you're able to do it. I quite really enjoy mentoring younger researchers as well, and just being able to, everything that I've learned about inclusivity and creating a good research environment, to be able to have that for people that are working with me and my team is something that I like.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. I think I've got two more. So one question is, from the other perspective, for example, to a group of white male students who are going on to pursue science, what would you say to them to help them accommodate less represented people in their future fields? So what can everyone else be doing?
I think listen. I think, yeah. But I suppose it's sort of advice that I would give everyone, because I think that ultimately everyone has experiences or aspects of their identity in which they are underrepresented, as well as ways in which they experience privilege. So I'm underrepresented because of my ethnic racial background, but I experience a lot of privilege as a man. So that means that I need to be sensitive and sort of understand. I can understand that experience of being underrepresented because I am in certain areas of my life. And so where I can exert my privilege, I need to do so whilst thinking about people I'm listening to, if that makes sense. I think it's about sort of thinking about how you can connect with people, especially when they're sharing sort of the ways in which they might have experienced discrimination or other types of things, and then thinking, well, then how can I use my privilege in a way that is of benefit? But yeah, I'm always kind of aware. And it ties back to how we started by sort of saying we're not touching on all areas in which someone can feel underrepresented, because everyone can validly feel underrepresented in science. So it's about saying, well, okay, if we all have that shared experience, let's be united then in sort of changing that so that's reduced.
Yeah, thank you.
I feel like there's a lot of talk of how like the burden of like trying to make science more inclusive does often fall on like the underrepresented researchers, and then that puts like another like, I guess, weight on their shoulders. So I think like what Seem was saying, just kind of like making the responsibility shared, and doing what you can to help with like your privilege. For example, the lecturer who got me onto the EEG project, he also did a project that I worked with him on about Black and South Asian students. They were like performing less as their white counterparts in psychology, and he set up a whole like program to like address that. We made like a whole like study initiative based off of it. So even though it doesn't necessarily impact him, he was like very dedicated to like address these like sort of pitfalls in research and science. And I thought that was like very, very interesting, that like it was someone that didn't look like me but that cared so much about that in research. So yeah,
so it's a responsibility for all of us, and to be like united as well, as you mentioned earlier.
I think they've covered everything.
Yeah, great. Okay, I think maybe last question, or was there another one that you wanted to ask? I'm going to ask a practical question. Do you know of any opportunities or have advice on how a student with a non-scientific background in their bachelor's could pursue science-focused PhD? Kind of put you on the spot.
I think maybe I could provide a suggestion. I don't know of any specific routes, but at our lab, like I was telling Amalia earlier, there are volunteers who will come in and help us run our research studies, because we need as many hands as we can get with the studies that are quite complicated. So a lot of people coming in to help often don't have the required background. Maybe they're still completing their degree, or they've completed it in something completely different and now they're interested in psychology. So they can gain experience that way. That's just one thing that I can think of. But yeah, somehow getting the experience that you might need to help you get in.
I would say I think keep on learning about whatever area it is of science that you're looking to pivot into or go into. There's nothing wrong with, researching articles and papers, or just reading books about different areas of science. I think the more knowledge you have, you can then go out and speak to people who kind of have an interest in what you want to go into, and then from then things can take place. But I think just like reading up, just making sure you're like kept in the loop of new science, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, so think about where what you already do ties into what you're wanting to do. So thinking about, okay, well, if your background is in, for example, like so many science communication roles might be taken by people with undergraduates or backgrounds in English or journalism. And so thinking about how you can, use your experiences to contribute in a way that best uses your skill set, but then allows you to gain that experience and that you're paid for.
Yeah, nice. And probably as well, reaching out to people, like you said earlier, like emailing. It's always worth reaching out to the person that you want to work with, because they likely will know of some kind of scheme that is potentially like multidisciplinary, or like you can apply some skills that you have.
And I would also say like a PhD is another form of learning. So it's not expected that you're going to come onto a project and know how you're doing everything. So it wasn't for a PhD, but it was for something else. There was a student who had a background in English who was really interested in some of the research I do with children and how they're speaking during play. And she just sort of said, I study what you're studying, but from an English background, not a psychology background. I'd love to learn about it with you through this like scheme. And I jumped on it, and I really thought then to make sure that would align, because I thought this, like, I can teach you the psychology, you're interested, and you have a different perspective, so you're also going to teach me. So just also thinking about, when you're a scientist, you're always learning something, so acknowledge that and sort of own that, and sort of think, well, actually, what is my experience and what can I bring, and what's going to complement what I'm doing. Yeah,
great, thank you. Any other questions that you want to ask, or shall we wrap up? Yeah. Thank you so much for all of your insights. I think it was really helpful to understand your experiences. Like specifically, one of the things that you learned in the focus group was young people wanted to like hear about the person themselves and also about failures as well, right? Because like we all fail. So I really appreciate you being like open and honest about that, and some lovely ideas about how we can be more inclusive, both like on a personal level, at the community level, and what we want from institutions as well. So thank you all for being here and for sharing your expertise with us. This concludes our very special Science or Fiction Live. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platforms and sign up to our newsletter on the website to receive 1 email per month with the latest episodes and updates on future events at scienceorfiction.co.uk. Thank you to Ahmed and Sahla for helping to produce today's episode and to host this interview. To the King's IOPPN Inclusive Fund for funding this event. Thank you to Kit Studio for the branding and JDK Films production. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.